Hi, welcome to Marker Board Videos. This is our Math in Minutes series, and this video today is factoring quadratic equations when a, or the leading term, does not equal 1. My name is Nancy Foote, and in about 10 minutes when you go through this video you'll be an expert at factoring quadratic equations when a is not equal to 1. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with 3m squared plus 5m plus 2. And just as a quick reminder, the 3, the number that's in front of the m squared, or the variable squared, that's considered the a term. The number that's in front of the variable with no exponent, only exponent's 1, is the b term. And the number without any variable at all, called the constant, is c. A, B, C. So just like factoring quadratic equations when a equals 1, we're going to do the same thing, but we have a couple of extra steps first. The first thing you want to do when you see that this is not 1, you're going to multiply a times c. So in this case, a times c is 6. Now you remember when we factored quadratics when a equals 1, then we found all the factors for c. Well, now we're going to find all the factors for a times c. So all the factors of 6. 1 and 6, negative 1 and negative 6, 2 and 3, negative 2 and negative 3. And just like with the quadratic, when we factor the quadratic when a equals 1, we're going to add these up and see which gives us a sum of 5. 6 plus 1 is 7, negative 6 and negative 1 is negative 7, 2 and 3 is 5, negative 2 and negative 3 is negative 5. So we're going to use 2 and 3, and here's an additional step. We're going to rewrite the 3m squared plus, and instead of 5m, we're going to say 2m plus 3m, because 2m plus 3m does give me 5m. 3m plus 2m plus 2 brings down my plus 2, and now we're ready to finish our factoring. Take the first two terms and put them in parentheses, and the last two terms and put them in parentheses. Now I'm sure you remember factoring a monomial out of a polynomial, and that's what we're doing here. We're finding what monomial this has in common and that one has in common. So when I look at 3m squared plus 3m, I know I can factor out a 3. There's a 3 in both terms, and I know I can factor out an m. And when I factor out a 3 and an m, basically I'm taking 3m squared divided by 3m. I'm left with an m plus 3. So I divided this by 3m and that by 3m. I'm sorry, m plus 1. Each of those by 3m. Leave my plus sign right here and ask yourself, what can you factor out of 2m and 2? Well, you're right, it's a 2. No m's, just a 2. And what we're left with is m plus 1. Again, let me make some room here. Again, we're doing reverse the distribution property, so just backwards. Now you'll notice that these things in the parentheses are the same, and that's your goal. Sometimes you need to put 2m and 3m, sometimes it's 3m and 2m. Play around with it until you can get these two to be exactly the same. So here's how you solve it. You make two sets of parentheses like you're used to doing. 3m goes here, plus 2, and this is m plus 1. It's whatever you had in common in that parentheses, and now you're done. Now you've factored a quadratic equation or expression where a was not equal to 1. I know that was a lot of information, so let's go ahead and do a couple more. Actually, we're going to do more than a couple more. 2d squared plus 9d plus 10. Again, we look at that and see that's not 1, so we're going to multiply 2 times 10. That gives me 20. Factors of 20, 1 and 20, negative 1 and negative 20, 2 and 10, negative 2 and negative 10, no 3's, 4 and 5, negative 4 and negative 5. And I'm done. Now let's go back and add those together and see which set is going to give me 9. 21, nope. Negative 21, nope. 12, negative 12. This one gives me 9, negative 9. So I'm going to use my 4 and my 5. This is again different, a little bit different from when you did your quadratics when a equals 1. So remember, we're going to do 2d and 2d squared, and instead of writing 9d, we're going to write 4d and 5d. So plus 4d plus 5d. If you worked backwards and you wanted to combine like terms, wouldn't you add those together and get 9d? Of course you would. So you haven't changed anything, you just made it look a little different. Now we're going to put both sets in parentheses. Find what 2d squared and 4d has in common. And I think it's a 2d. 2d squared divided by 2d is d. 4d divided by 2d is 2. Erase this so we have some room to work. What do 5d and 10 have in common? Sure, their common factor is 5. And you're going to end up with d plus 2. That's good. That's what you want. You want the things in the parentheses to be the same. That means you're on the right track. 2 sets of parentheses. 2d plus 5. D plus 2. And now you've factored a quadratic equation again, where a did not equal 1. Let's do some more. (2x squared plus 13x plus 11). So now we're looking for the factors of 22. Why? Because this is not 1, so I need to multiply it by the 11. 1 times 11 is 22, and I'm looking for factors of 22. 1 and 22, negative 1 and negative 22, 2 and 11, negative 2 and negative 11, and I think those are all my factors. Again, remember, it's important to write the negative roots even if you don't think you're going to use them for this problem. You will use them for another problem, and if you get in the habit of looking at negative roots as well as positive roots, when you find one that you need a negative root, it won't be a big surprise to you. So we're going to use 2 and 11, 2x squared plus 2x plus 11x plus 11. 2 sets of parentheses. You're starting to see a little pattern here, and that's good. The more of these that you do, the better you'll get at them. So do as many as you can find. 2x squared and 2x have in common a 2x. 11x and 11 have in common an 11. And if you'll notice, when I took the 2 out, or I divided each term by 2x, I got x plus 1. When I divided each term by 11, I got x plus 1. I want the thing in the parentheses to be the same, so that when I'm done with my factoring, I take this 2x and that plus 11, x plus 1, and I'm done. Please remember that it's really important that the sign stays with the number. The sign stays with the number. Okay? A lot of people get confused about that, but if you always remember that whatever sign you have, positive or negative, plus or minus, it stays with that number, you won't have any problems at all. More practice. This is a different kind of concept. It's different from what we've been working on so far, and so it's going to be a little bit confusing. That's okay. Embrace that confusion. Let your brain be a little bit confused about it. It's called cognitive dissonance, and it means your brain is trying to figure out a way to make sense of it, and it's struggling. Struggling is very good in math. You want to struggle in math. It helps you make those permanent neurological connections. So don't worry if it's not coming easy to you right now. It will. Just keep on trying. I noticed on this equation, or this expression, that a is not equal to 1. So I know right away I'm going to multiply 2 times 7 and get 14. What are my factors of 14? 1 and 14, negative 1 and negative 14, 2 and 7, negative 2 and negative 7. And actually, I could have stopped right here, because in my mind, when I start putting down the factors, I'm automatically adding them together and trying to get to my target number of 9. Eventually, you'll find 14 and you'll say, oh, that's 2 and 7. And you'll know it. But again, that's due to practice. Let's rewrite this equation, this expression, into 2w squared plus 2w plus 7w plus 7. Again, 7w and 2w give me 9w. I've not changed a thing. I just made it look a little bit different. So look at 2w squared and 2w. What do they have in common? And look at 7w and 7. What do they have in common? Are the things in your parentheses the same? You want them to be. Bring down the common items and multiply it by what you had in your parentheses. More practice, the more you practice, the better you're going to be at this. So you want to practice, 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 practice as much as you can. Let's do another one. 3d squared plus 10d plus 7. Again, that's not 1, so I'm going to multiply those together. I'm going to look for the factors of 21. Now in my mind, I'm seeing a positive 10. So I'm going to tell myself right away, it's got to be 3 and 7. There's no other option as far as I know. So if you can jump to that right away, now's the time to go ahead and jump to that. So 3d squared plus 7d plus 3d plus 7. Now when I look at that, I know right away before I do anything else that 3d and 7 aren't going to have anything in common. So I'm going to flip these two around and I'm going to write it 3d squared plus 3d plus 7d plus 7. All I did was change the order because I want the 7's together and the 3's together. That's all I did. When I look at 3d squared and 3d, what's in common? Yep, the 3d. When I look at 7d and 7, what's together? Yep, a 7. Do I have the same thing inside my parentheses? Absolutely I do, and that's exactly what I want to see. I need to see that. Parenthesis, 3d plus 7. Again, the 3d comes from here and the 7 comes from there. And d plus 1. Those two parentheses are multiplied by each other because when you multiply this out, you're going to get 3d squared plus 10d plus 7. That's what factoring is about. It's breaking it down into its components. Let's throw a couple negative signs in here because we haven't done any with negative signs yet. 2x squared minus 5x plus 2. So again, because this isn't a 1, I need to multiply a and c together and get 4. My factors of 4 are 1 and 4, negative 1 and negative 4, 2 and 2, negative 2 and negative 2. And when I add those together, 1 plus 4 is 5, negative 1 plus negative 4 is negative 5. That's the set I want because I want to equal this negative 5, this b term. 2x squared minus 1x minus 4x plus 2. Okay, let's take a look at that. That might or might not give me what I want. I'm not sure if I want the 4x first or the 1x first. If I look at this, if I look at that, I can take only an x out. Whereas if I had 4x there, I could take a 2x out. So I'm going to try and switch it and see if that helps me at all any. So one set of parentheses. Let me rewrite this a little bit here. 2x squared minus 4x, and then I'm going to put plus negative 1x plus 2. I hope that's okay with you. I need to have that negative sign stay with the 1, and when I just drew my parentheses I didn't leave myself enough room. So 2x squared minus 4x, what do they have in common? A 2 and an x, and I'm left with an x minus 2. So that looks good so far. Now this, what do I mean, they have a 1 in common, they have a negative 1 in common, that's pretty much it. But remember, our target is to get x minus 2 inside the parentheses. So I'm going to take this number, negative 2. I'm going to take 2, this 2 up here, positive 2, divided by negative 2, and I get negative 1. So that's what I'm going to factor out. I'm going to factor out a negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is 1x. 2 divided by negative 1 is negative 2. And now I have exactly what I want inside the parentheses. Use that to your own benefit. Make sure that you are aware that those things need to have the same parentheses. What's inside has to be identical. And so sometimes when you're trying to figure out what am I going to factor out, you can just ask yourself, if I take this constant and divide it by this constant, what do I get? That's what you're probably going to factor out. So to finish this, it's 2x minus 1 times x minus 2. Let's do one more with a negative sign, then we'll call it a day. 5n squared minus 24n minus 5. Again, this isn't a 1, so I need to multiply these two together, and the sign stays with the number. So it's 5 times negative 5. I'm trying to find the factors or the roots of negative 25. So now that could be 1 times negative 25 or negative 1 times 25. And if you're looking at 24, negative 24, I can stop right there. Now you can put 5 and negative 5, add those up, you'll get 0. But eventually you'll get so good at this that you'll know exactly what factors you want to use, and you won't need to do the whole column. Until you reach that point, however, go ahead and do the whole column, because there might be a root in there that's going to surprise you. Especially if you have a 24 or 36. They each have a gazillion roots, so make sure you list all of them when you have those numbers. So let's rewrite this. 5n squared. Now, am I going to go with negative 25 or 1 right here? Knowing that I have a 5n, I'm going to put my negative 25 right here. Simply because I see 5 and 25 have a factor in common. That might not work in the end, but it might. And so I'm kind of predicting what I think is going to happen. It's plus 1n minus 5. That looks good so far. Two sets of parentheses. 5n squared minus 25n. They have a 5 and an n in common, which leaves n minus 5. Oh my goodness, look at how beautiful this is. However, in order to do these problems, you have to factor out something. So in this case, the only thing you factor out is a 1. You must write a plus 1, or you're going to get your problem wrong. You're not factoring it properly. Because we need to be able to say 5n plus 1, n minus 5. If you don't factor it out, you lose this whole second term. So you have to make sure you write that plus 1. And the answer is 5n plus 1 times n minus 5. If you have questions about factoring quadratic expressions when a is not equal to 1, please send me an email so I can help you out. And have a great day.